sequence start 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And good evening to you all. Hello out there in the crazy, crazy world that we are living in. Nice to see everybody in the chat. Make sure you hit like on your way in. Look at all these happy faces. John Bolton, Scott Harris, Joe, how do you say it, Joe? Anania, Beyond the Veil. Look at everybody. Hey, good to see you all on this chilly Tuesday night. I don't know where you guys are. I'm in central North Carolina, and it has been frigid. Super cold. Uh, anyway, Anania. Thank you, Joe. With a last name like Morphonios, you can imagine I am curious about the pronunciations of people's last names. Hey, John Bolton starts us off with a super chat donation saying, did you read about Tom Barrack's visit to Iraq and his threats to them about aiding Lebanon when Israel is supposedly going to move in to disarm Hezbollah? What is your analysis of this attack? Well, John, let me save that. Maybe I can do that tomorrow. Let me screenshot because I got a whole nother topic for tonight. I'll mention Lebanon just briefly tonight, but not much. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the donation. But we're gonna focus a little bit tonight on Venezuela. And John, I'll tell you what. Speaking of neocons, hasn't this Trump administration really turned out to be, I don't know, a pretty good mirror of past neocon administrations? Not a whole lot of difference out there that I'm seeing. Very, very similar. Hello, Gina. All right, so what I'm going to do is get started here. And moderators, if you would, every now and then encourage people to hit the like button. We've got 64 viewers right now, 21 likes, and growing. I'm going to do the show in 2 parts tonight. Hopefully, we'll have this done in 2 hours. And actually, if it's not going well, if we don't have enough viewers or whatever, then I'll stop, around the first half. I've got kind of 2 segments for what I want to talk about tonight, and I can always do half tonight, half tomorrow. But we'll see. You know how Jake is. I got a problem with being long-winded. For tonight, remember, as always, I'll be doing a little gift drawing. So if you would like to be in tonight's entry, all you got to do is make a donation of $5 or more. I'm glad to accept any donations, but $5 or more gets you an entry. Slip of paper with your name on it will go in, and we'll do a drawing. I'm planning on actually doing 2 drawings if there are enough donations to just justify it. So what we're going to do is I'll do the first half, which will be about an hour, and then we will do a drawing for the donations up until that point. For the second half, if we've gotten another, say, at least $20, $30 in donations, we'll do a second drawing. And what you get is, for every $5, by the way, you get 1 entry. So, for example, John Bolton there, his roughly $10 donation gets him 2 entries tonight. But the drawing will be for either an autographed pocket Constitution with the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, so on and so forth, a free month of Substack. I did do a Substack article today that was short enough that I put it out to the full free subscribers. So if you are not already following me, and not just followed, but subscribed on Substack, go do that. Let's get the link in there one more time. You have the option to subscribe for free, and you have the option to do a paid membership. The free ones, you'll get articles and some notices and stuff like that, but definitely get a lot more with the paid membership. There it is, blackstoneintel.substack.com. And just so you can see what I'm talking about here, let me flip over there and show you here. So this is the Substack site. Today's article is Trump, arms broker of the global war machine. And so I've got this linked here to, I also did it as a podcast episode, so you can click there, listen to the podcast version of it, or you can read the article. Not a real long one, with some links to sources for the casualty figures and things like that I include. But anyway, that is, woohoo! That is that. All right. So anyway, free Pocket Constitution for the winner, free Substack subscription for a month, or I don't have one in front of me, but an autographed 5x7 of Jake, which I know so many of you are dying to put on your mantle so you can look up at my glowing face. But anyway, I actually have had a handful of people now. I've been asked multiple times to do it, and I'm always like, whatever, nobody wants that. But I got thinking, I've got some 5x7s of people that I like, that I was like, hey, sign that, send me a copy of that. Including Zombo from Zombo's House of Horrors. Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this. By the way, anyone that does donate $50 or more, you can get either, and I've got a kit waiting to go out that from someone that got it last time that I still haven't sent out. The Palestine Support Kit, you get a lapel Palestine lapel pin, handful of Palestine stickers, free Palestine bracelet, some literature on the illegal occupation, and one of these Palestine desk flags. So anyway, that's the Palestine kit. Or the other option for a donation of $50 or more is the other alternative is a 15-minute phone call with me. We can chat about whatever you'd like, except for my my sources I can't tell you about. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Oh, John says, the only thing I want, Jake, is the Epstein files released and the USA back in control of the patriotic Americans so your government doesn't destroy, government don't destroying our part of the world and give us Al-Qaeda in Syria. That is such an anti-neocon thing for John Bolton to say. Thank you, John. And Joe, thank you for your donation, my friend. I appreciate it. So, as I go along, if you have any trouble hearing, either if I'm clipping because I'm too close to the microphone, or if you can't hear me well enough, let me know in the chat. I will try and follow along a bit as I go here. Start your live stream around 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Believe it or not, that's when I had intended to start my live stream tonight. That was my goal. And then I was like, you know what? I want to prepare more material. And so I sat here working on more stuff and ended up not going live until now. But I feel you, brother. I know what you're talking about. Getting started at 10 is late. Venezuela. Venezuela is no longer a country where the government fully controls the use of its own force, or the collective force in the country. Typically in a country, the government kind of has a monopoly on force. Not that individuals can't fight and do stuff, but the power ends with the government. But Venezuela, it's not like that. Not anymore, at least, where the government's kind of the end-all of the power of force within its borders. Instead, the problem in Venezuela is that power is divided among several competing actors, armed factions, who operate with their own agendas. They've got their own territories. They've got their own corrupt revenue streams, illegal revenue streams. And so in Venezuela, this fragmentation means that the state has lost that traditional monopoly of violence that stable governments are supposed to maintain. Maduro's regime sits on top of a loose, unstable coalition of criminal networks. You've got guerrilla groups, you've got military factions within the military. And all of these different criminal networks can exert force independently of the central government. And a major share of this power is held by cartel-linked networks and military mafias. And they control smuggling routes. They control illegal gold mines in Venezuela. They conduct extortion schemes, even against other politicians. They are there at borders, controlling border crossings. And so these groups often operate within the state apparatus itself. For example, you've got corrupt generals. You've got corrupt intelligence chiefs. You've got military units that function independently, kind of like criminal organizations, more than like actual government institutions. And this typically happens in Banana Republic type corrupt government regimes, but it can happen here too. We're seeing more and more of the brazen corruption of the Trump administration is causing more and more fracturing. You've got the Democrats telling the military to disobey illegal orders. And so we see a splitting starting to take place. Just the little hairline fractures in our institutions taking place, but nothing like what is the problem in Venezuela. Because among these dissident factions, you've got foreign guerrilla groups like the ELN. You've got the factions of the FARC, F-A-R-C, which have carved out enclaves inside Venezuela. And they're the ones that are running the mines and the checkpoints and the illegal, illicit economies under Maduro's political protection, but not necessarily his command. That's the difference. These groups are doing what they do with his protection, but not with his complete control. And so the result is that you've got a country where violence and coercion has become dispersed. It's not centralized in the power of a government. And that's that's dangerous for Maduro. But he survives not because he controls all of Venezuela, but because he has been able to manage an alliance of these armed actors who benefit from this kind of broken up system as it actually exists, not the way they wish it was. But what this means is that if the regime were to collapse suddenly, say through U.S. military pressure, or the CIA succeeds in another one of these coup attempts where the people rise up and topple the government, what will happen is the country would rapidly descend into absolute anarchy. There would be chaos because you'd have rival factions fighting for territory and fighting for control of resources. So it's in this reality where we're looking at what Trump is doing, what he's planning on doing, this intervention, and we can see that it's far more dangerous and unpredictable than what you might see happen in a more stable country where you don't have all of this criminal activity and removing Maduro does not mean that you would have a stable government that would take the place of what is there. In fact, it's not going to happen. So, the big question is Trump going to attack? Well, about 4 months ago, I was doing some consulting work for an investor who wanted me to, basically he wanted to tap me for my assessment on global stability. Was the Iran crisis going to turn into world war? Was the Ukraine-Russia conflict going to turn into a world war with NATO? What's going on? Where would the conflict be in the world that would either open or close investment opportunities? And I was talking through this. And what I said then is that the spot to watch would be Venezuela. And I referred to reports that I had done throughout Trump's first term on how really what he wants is to take control of the Venezuelan oil. Just like he wants to take control of the Venezuelan oil away from the Venezuelans, just like he took control of the Syrian oil away from the Syrians. So that's what I was saying in this phone call. And so here we are. Sure, his propaganda has changed between his first term and his second term, as he has tried to find a story that tickles the ears of his base to allow him to carry out regime change operations with their support. But regardless of whether Trump can win his base over on this, he's going to take action in Venezuela one way or another. Remember the pattern I tell you to watch for. First, the oligarchs decide which resources they want to pilfer in a target country. Second, their think tank, the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, it writes up the policies to make that objective happen. They give it to the State Department because basically the U.S. State Department is owned and controlled by the CFR. The U.S. State Department then implements the CFR's policies, and using the power of the U.S. State Department, diplomatic and economic pressure is applied to the target country, trying to force them to comply. Right? Now, when that doesn't work, the next step is the CIA goes in with its own regime change operations, primarily by agitating dissident groups to try and bring down the country from within, like they did in Kiev back in 2014. Now, when that fails, what is that last step? You send in the U.S. military. If the CIA can't do it, you bring in the military. And that's where we're at. Years of sanctions against Venezuela have failed. Years of the CIA trying to topple the government have failed. And so the only tool that you've got left to get this oil is the U.S. military. The Trump administration is no different from the George W. Bush administration in this regard. Cheney wanted to take control of Iraq's oil, so they fabricated the WMD story to get the public on their side. Trump wants to take control of Venezuela's oil, so he has fabricated this story about Venezuelan narco-terrorists that pose a clear and present danger to the American people that can only be solved through sending in the U.S. military. Only way to save Americans from being killed in horrific numbers by these narco-terrorists is to go to war. And so, just like during the Bush years, here we are. You've got some people speaking out against what Trump is doing, but you also, when you go on Twitter, take a look. You've got the loudest cheerleaders for the U.S. president going to war unnecessarily are once again that faction of Americans that boasts the loudest about how they are the ones against the deep state. They are against the neocons. They are against nation building. They're the ones that are awake to the schemes of these dastardly globalists. And yet history has proven time and time again that they are the ones first in line to cheer and wave signs and the old red, white, and blue flag in the march to war. Now, fortunately, that kind of crazy support for war does not include you guys. Most Blackstone Intel viewers lean right of the political spectrum. We've got, people on left and right that watch the show, but I think it's fair to say the majority are right-leaning. But you guys are among the patriots who are awake to what's going on, and you don't support these military ventures. Not Venezuela, not Syria, not Libya, not Iran, none of this stuff. Congratulations. I'm glad to be associated with you. You're my kind of people. The propaganda doesn't fool you the same way that it sways the masses who say, watch Fox News and who gobble up state propaganda. Joe out there says, I'm a proud lefty. Hey, glad to have you, my man. Glad to have you viewing. I don't care what anybody's politics are, left or right, as long as they believe in the supremacy of the rule of law and the U.S. Constitution and are willing to discuss and debate and work within the framework of our system of government to achieve the changes that they want, rather than doing things like, I don't know, say storming the Capitol when the U.S. Congress is trying to certify election results. Anyway, now it's my assessment that Trump plans on maintaining a military buildup in the Caribbean, not just these 11 warships for right now. He is planning on keeping a military presence beefed up in the Caribbean for at least the next 3 years. I base that in part on the fact that he's already threatening to attack other South American countries. Just today, he suggested that he might have to carry out a war against Venezuela's neighbor, Colombia, because drugs come from Colombia. I hear cocaine comes from Colombia, is what he said. But, yeah, you should ask your son about that. He could tell you where the cocaine comes from. Ask Don Jr. But just today, he talked about attacking another country down there. So that's one thing. But I also base my position on this partly on the paper trail that I've been watching. The Pentagon has quietly locked in these multi-year supply contracts for military forces assigned to this so-called Puerto Rico zone, at least through 2028. And I'm talking about contracts for vendors to provide food. Saw a contract for baked goods, logistics support, and other things that are necessary to handle prolonged troop sustainment. The United States doesn't provision a 4-year feeding schedule for troops, for the Caribbean, just for, like a temporary symbolic deployment outside of Venezuela. That's not what you wouldn't form these long-term contracts for that. So this suggests to me that the military is provisioning for operational staying power. So you got the buildup of at this point, 11 warships offshore. You've got B-1 bombers probing Venezuelan airspace. And you can kind of see, when you look at the assets in place, you can kind of see the shape that this initial strike is going to take. It's kind of visible already. John in the chat says, if the U.S. government destroys Venezuela, it will destabilize their neighboring countries. It won't go the way they plan, in my opinion. I agree with you completely. I'll be talking about that a little bit. Thank you, John, for the donation, my friend. So, if war comes, and there's no guarantee it will, but we're definitely looking more and more likely day by day that there's going to be kinetic action. If war comes, it'll begin from the sky. Destroyers are going to launch cruise missiles. Carrier wings are going to fly suppression runs. You'll have long-range bombers dismantling Venezuela's air defenses and their radar networks, hardened command nodes, all the things that you typically see in the opening salvos of an operation. Every early attack is going to be targeted toward to shock the system. They're going to calibrate the attack run or the attack hierarchy to hit drug infrastructure, communications hubs, leadership compounds, basically anything that would help to blind or dislocate Maduro's inner circle. This opening phase that we would see if this happens is not about trying to take territory. It's about staggering the regime so thoroughly that the next blow can shatter what remains of the operational hierarchy. And that next blow, from what I judge, is not going to be just like an assassination of Maduro. I'm not saying that Trump won't try and have him killed, but killing Maduro alone won't achieve the objective, and Trump knows it. Because Venezuela's ruling structure behaves less like a government and more like a decentralized criminal network. And they've got redundancies built into their chain of power. So killing Maduro, all that's going to do is you kill Maduro, it elevates Diosdado Cabello. Kill Cabello, fine, what happens? That elevates Delcy Rodriguez. There's always another head of the Hydra ready to step forward. So for a coup or a negotiated surrender to take root in Venezuela, what Trump would have to do is remove multiple figures almost simultaneously. Decapitation is not something that it would take forever. You're just going to do it one by one over time. Wait to see who they get. All right, let's do that. But even if the regime were to collapse, what comes after would be more dangerous than the war itself. Like I said, Venezuela is already a fragmented landscape of competing armed actors. The cartel syndicates, the military mafias, the ELN guerrillas, the surviving FARC dissidents. They've got control of the mines and the smuggling corridors, border crossings. They've got control of entire regions. These guys are the apex predators of a parallel ecosystem in Venezuela. So if you remove some of these people, some of the heads, just take them out abruptly, you don't suddenly have a peaceful environment. What you have is a collapse into chaos. Think of what happened after Gaddafi was taken out in Libya. It just plunged the country into chaos because you had so many competing factions. So I expect that no matter what happens in Venezuela, the Venezuelan people, and even if Maduro clings to power, we are going to see suffering among the Venezuelan people as a result of any military action that the United States takes. What I don't anticipate, at least not at this point, is that the USA is going to go in and carry out some kind of ground invasion of Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. The terrain alone would devour any conventional armored push. You just can't do it. It's steep, it's sprawling. And you get down into the urban areas, easily sabotaged. Let me see. See if I can show you here on Google Earth. There we go. Bear with me. I just have to resize my window here so I can see what I'm doing. All right. So you got the USA. Here's South America down here. Here's Colombia over here. Here's Venezuela over here. Zoom in. So here's Cuba. I've been to all these places. Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Grand Cayman. Spent some time in Tulum. But anyway, down my father's wife is from Bogota. Naturally, she's not my biological mother, but anyway, Venezuela, go down into Caracas and look at what you've got all around. Right? Got a huge mountain range. The city sits inside a long, narrow valley in the Venezuelan coastal mountain range. The most dominant feature is El Avila, which is a massive mountain wall that rises immediately to the north of the city, separates Caracas from the Caribbean Sea. And then to the south and east, the terrain continues as steep, irregular, densely populated hills. So what this geography means is that you can't simply roll into Caracas from open terrain the way that U.S. forces drove into Baghdad back when we, after our shock and awe opening salvo and then went in. Can't do that. Any military force would have to fight through tight choke points, elevated neighborhoods, mountain passes. The hills around the sides here provide natural defensive high ground, ideal for ambushes. They could easily collapse infrastructure like bridges and tunnels, hit highways where you end up bottlenecking an invading force. So at most, the United States could seize some coastal airfields by surprise. They could even insert some Marines, put some boots on the ground for limited objectives. They could create some corridors for, say, drones and special ops. Trump's got his 11 warships out here, which among all these warships, you've got in the neighborhood of 15,000 personnel that can potentially conduct amphibious raids and seize infrastructure, but they can't occupy a capital city of millions of people. Any attempt by Trump to take Caracas would require not only air superiority, but you'd have to have secure supply lines and an occupation force that is massive, far larger than anything that he's got deployed. And so we would see a massive troop buildup before any of that would take place. And there's just no signs of it at this point. So that's why I think that any thought that that we're going to send boots on the ground and just take over Venezuela, it's not going to happen. It would be a massive loss of U.S. life in the process. So instead, the most probable sequence of events resembles a 4-phase pressure campaign. First, you come in from the sky, open air strikes, naval strikes, send in the tomahawks, pop those off, paralyze state systems. Second part of this would be the decapitation effort, where you would start targeting the leadership strata to force the structure to start collapsing from within. Third thing would be, like I said, the limited ground operations where they try and seize runways, maybe radar sites, coastal logistic hubs, something like that. Just enough foothold to sustain ongoing sorties, but not enough to hold any significant territory. And the final thing would be where the pressure shifts inward. You start tightening the noose around mid-level commanders until one faction breaks ranks and starts moving against the others. And it wouldn't take much to get these factions fighting each other. So the United States doesn't need to conquer Venezuela. It only needs someone inside the regime to decide that the Maduro era is just too expensive to maintain. Not worth it. And the irony is that toppling Maduro is getting rid of him is the easiest part of all of this. That could be done in a matter of weeks, if that. I'm somewhat surprised he hasn't taken off already. But stabilizing the country afterward, that is the thing that would be way more difficult, because you'd have to invest vast amounts of American funding into trying to stabilize the country. Major effort. And after what we did with Iraq, the American people are not going to stand for that. You would have to have the political will of the people to sustain it. And the American people are not going to put up with any kind of prolonged occupation of Venezuela. Institutional reconstruction. So what you'd see is a grinding effort to prevent criminal networks from filling the vacuum. That's if they were going to try and take over Venezuela, which are, they not in that sense. If you don't have these kinds of commitments, then the Hydra just keeps growing new heads, right? Under whatever new banner, the country returns back to square one. You have the same problem over and over again. It's the kind of trouble that Israel has with Hamas, with Hezbollah. They kill one leader after another, and it just keeps coming back. So Maduro is gambling on the assumption that Trump's base still believes in this idea of America first, that they're still non-interventionists the way that they claim to be. Maduro may be banking on this hope, he's foolish if he is, but banking on the idea that Trump won't risk being sucked into some kind of big foreign entanglement because his base would be pissed off. But Trump has shown before, just this year, that he doesn't give a crap what his supporters think. That any kind of personal affront or political pressure from his own voters, that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to Trump. I mean, just look at the Epstein file issue, where he turns on his supporters who are calling for the files to be released, telling them they're weak and they're stupid, and he doesn't want them as supporters because they don't realize that it's all just a Democrat hoax and the files written by Obama and Biden and Hillary and Comey and all that stupid stuff that he says. But you take a look at the military buildup that is already posturing there, and it suggests to me that Trump is, it's more than just bluffing. He intends to take action. And here he is in his second term. He can do whatever the hell he wants, regardless of what his voters think. Trump has always been about numero uno. He doesn't care about his followers. He never has cared about his followers. There's simply a means to achieve power and feed his insatiable narcissism. He wants people to tell him how great he is, but you know, he's gonna put himself first no matter what. Now, let me talk for a second about his rationale for everything that he's doing, right? The public rationale for all this is his claim that Venezuela is a major fentanyl player, that Maduro himself personally commands Cartel de los Soles, and that he directs the gang known as Tren de Aragua. But these claims, when you examine them, when you just do some simple research, they don't hold up to scrutiny. But, you know, that's the case with pretty much everything Trump says. All it takes is a quick Google search to verify what he's saying, and you can see the data for yourself. His claims about all this narco-terrorism just don't hold up to scrutiny. But the absence of evidence has not prevented the use of this propaganda as political justification for a campaign against narco-terrorists. I'm not saying that narco-terrorists don't exist. I'm saying that the reality is far more complicated than the way it's being portrayed. Venezuela is not exporting fentanyl into the United States. That's not the problem. But it is deeply infiltrated by criminal networks. It's military, it's police apparatuses. They are tied to illicit economies, including drug trafficking. So that's true. But these truths have been selectively framed so that the Trump regime can have this narrative that lets them kind of scaffold into escalating attacks into full-blown military strikes against Venezuela. If you look just the last couple weeks, B-1 bombers have reportedly entered Venezuelan airspace twice. Trump says, oh, no, that's not true. Maduro even pretends like, I don't know. That's because both sides understand that once you start saying, oh, yeah, we're doing that, it's going to trigger a bigger confrontation. And neither side is quite ready for that. But you look at the Navy sitting out there offshore, they're in formation, described by some lawmakers as the last responsible steps before ousting Maduro. You know, this scare tactic, trying to intimidate, trying to make him run just out of fear. So you've got, like John was saying earlier in the chat, this is it's not just Venezuela that's worried. You've got the entire region that's holding its breath because they know that once one domino falls, they're all close together and they're going to get knocked down in one way or another too. If conflict erupts, it's not going to be a neat operation with some kind of scripted end. The most likely scenario is a large air campaign, targeted decapitation strikes, limited coastal seizures. The least likely is going to be a massive ground invasion of Caracas. But the real danger lies in what happens after the dust starts to settle. That's where you get the criminal fragmentation. That's where you start to get various services, access to food, things happening that leads to civilian suffering. A country that further fractures in a way that will take years to rebuild. So can Trump remove Maduro? Sure, that's totally achievable. But rebuilding Venezuela afterward, that's the part that short-sighted politicians like Donald Trump and George W. Bush were not and are not prepared to own. They'll leave that to some future president to deal with the cleanup. They don't care because they're sociopaths. Anyway, that's just a little bit of information there. This is the kind of stuff that I wanted to talk about in the first half. So let's do let me take a look here. I'm not sure here, but we may have, let's see, we've got, is it just the two people that have donated? I know that John has done multiple donations, and let's see. And Joe, I know, did a donation there. Yeah, so Joe and John have donated. So right now, we've only got 2 people that will be in the drawing for this first drawing. So if you want to get your name in to this drawing, I'll hold off a second, give you a second to do that. The ways that you can do it, the way that you can get in get into the drawing would be the YouTube channel membership. Just look on your screen there. You can click join. You can subscribe on Patreon, $5 or more. You can subscribe to my Substack newsletter at the paid Substack newsletter. You can make a donation on PayPal, or you can make a donation on Buy Me a Coffee. Any of those will work. And I have had here, I'm looking at my alerts, I have had a handful of people subscribe to the Substack, the free membership during the stream. Thank you guys. And a lot of people have been subscribing. I don't know which of my articles is out there that's causing it, but I've had a big increase in free subscribers over the last 2 or 3 days. Like, I'm getting alerts constantly. So someone has shared one of my articles or something, because it's suddenly getting a big spike in people. All right. We'll say goodbye to that troll out there in the chat. Anyway, John says, what's your take on Venezuela having surprises in the form of hypersonic missiles, etc., that they have made themselves with the help from BRICS nations? I've seen, some of the headlines, and including Russia providing materials, and what I think is this. I think that first of all, Russia, for example, I think Russia will do exactly what they did with Syria and with Iran. Yes, Putin goes in there and invests a lot of money into developing economic relationships with some of these countries that are kind of on the outside, that have been targeted with sanctions and everything by the Western Anglo-American banking network. But when it comes down to it, every single time when the stuff starts hitting the fan, Putin does not act to defend those people. He did when the United States was not yet involved militarily. He did send in his mercenaries on the ground, but his Air Force in there to soften things up and keep Bashar al-Assad in power. But once the United States was in there, he didn't challenge. Same with Iran. And even though he has given a lot of support to Venezuela, I think even today there was something in the news about Putin basically washing his hands. I think that that Russia will use and discard allies in a very cold, calculating way. It's, if we can be friends and have trade and everything together, great. If it gets to the point, though, where we have to put our necks on the line for you, sorry, got to cut you loose. I think that's basically what has happened. Now, I'm talking about that regarding the hypersonic missiles because regardless of what they may have, if you don't have support of major allies, geopolitical support of allies that can stand with you, you pop off a hypersonic missile at the United States and it's full-on war. And Maduro would not dare do such a thing unless it was, I think, even in an existential crisis where he knows he's going to be killed, I don't think that he would do that. I just don't see it happening. Venezuela does not have they can't stand toe-to-toe with the United States. And using something like a hypersonic missile, that would give the United States a black eye for sure. But I just don't, without the clear, overt support of Russia, and not just diplomatic, but military support from Russia, I don't foresee an escalation like that. Now, here's the thing. Just like we would be afraid, Pakistan is a nuclear power. We want their government, even if we don't like their leaders, we want them to remain in control and stable. Because if that country fractures and you've got dissident groups that get in there and gain control of their weapons, you're looking at potentially World War III. If one of those guys fires off a nuke at India, we're all toast. And that's the danger in Venezuela. I don't think the danger is Maduro. Maduro has been in there for years. He wants to remain in there for years. He's not an idealist who wants to go out with a bang. He wants to live. And I think in the end, he'll do like Assad and abdicate rather than stay and fight to the bitter end and die. Because, he's a selfish, corrupt criminal is what he is. He's a thug. But if there's a chance for him to get out with his life, he'll do it. Attacking the United States with hitting us anywhere, with or without a hypersonic missile. If he attacks the homeland, that's going to result in hellfire raining down. Can you imagine if a foreign country attacked us on our own soil? And I'm not talking about just a act of terrorism like 9/11. I mean, you saw what happened as a real result of 9/11, but another Pearl Harbor event where it's an actual state actor, not a non-state actor like Al-Qaeda. I think that Maduro is you can see the thumbnail for this episode is Trump dancing in his red hat and Maduro dancing in his red hat. Maduro's been out there showing, hey, I'm tough. I'm not cowed by your threats. And I think that he's got a lot of confidence, overconfidence, that there's that he can weather the the storms that are on the way. And he can for a while. But the problem is, again, it is not the external threat. It's competing factions inside. And we'll talk in the second half a little bit about how even within the military and the intelligence systems that he runs there, he's got the Cubans in there. He doesn't trust a lot of the Venezuelans because there's so many factions in Venezuela that would be very content to see him go. So what he has to worry about would be attacks from within, more so than the United States going in and killing him. It's a possibility. I mean, you've seen Trump do similar things. The way that he assassinated Qasem Soleimani. He wasn't a leader, but he may as well been. He was basically the second most powerful person in the country after the Ayatollah. And I don't think that Trump realized that. I think he was so stupid he didn't realize what he was doing, which is why Trump tacoed out when Iran hit back and struck the U.S. air base. And Trump didn't retaliate again. He didn't escalate further. But anyway, John says, all right, we read that one. John and Joe. Let's see here. How should we do this? John, you have got... you've got a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 entry slips, and Joe's got 1. So let's do the drawing for you guys, and then we will continue because it'll only get tighter as time goes on, more difficult. Let's do that. And then we'll do the second half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. 1, 2. In fact, you know what? Let me look here, John. I have started keeping, because I end up doing so many of these slips, I've started keeping some of the slips so that I can not have to rewrite everyone's live. Let me take a look and see. I'll bet I've got a few John Boltons in here already. Well, there's a couple. All right, so I got 2 there. Let me fill out the others real quick. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Thank you, John, for all of these donations, my friend. Sure do appreciate you. And then we have also Joe. So here's going to be the first drawing. We have got... Let me pull up my stuff here so I can see. All right. Joe says, no need to put on the drawing. I'm okay giving mine to John. Well, how about this then? Why don't we do this? Joe, I'm going to go ahead and I'll put your name in here. And then John, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. two of the old ones. All right, John, I'm going to fold these and drop them all in here. And then what we'll do is I'll do this additional information, and then we'll do the drawing later. John, basically assume that you have won that first drawing if you want. But we'll do, let me continue on with the second half of the material, and then we'll come back and do the drawing. Joe says, good luck, John. Hope you win. Bolton should get a hard-backed Constitution book. Yeah. I'm going to count. We'll count John as the winner of that first one. But let's go ahead and do the second half here of the stream. Let me find out. Let's see. We've got 120 people watching right now. 80 likes. Hit the like button if you would, if you haven't done so yet. And let me know here. We are at 11 p.m. I've got maybe 45 minutes. You know what? Probably more like half an hour. I might have half an hour. Maybe not even that much of material left. Would you like me to do the rest of the Venezuela material tonight, right now? Or do you want me to do it in a separate stream? I'm glad doing it either way. New Jersey Devil says, what time did the stream start? Right at an hour and 6 minutes ago. Hour and 6 minutes ago. So I'm trying to get better keeping my shows shorter, because other than the people that watch it during the live stream, hardly anybody will go in and watch the whole thing after the fact. So let me know out there. Joe says separate stream. New Jersey says I'll watch the replay. Susie Q says, okay, separate stream. I'm good either way. Doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. JumpTube says, now while it's fresh in everybody's mind. How about this as a compromise? How about I do it now, but for those that have to go, I will clip this out and re-upload just this second half as its own standalone video tomorrow. That way, if you don't want to hang out, watch it tonight, you can catch it tomorrow as its own video. And I'll try and be a little bit quicker so that I can keep this shorter. Yeah, JumpTube says, yeah, you can clip it in shorter vids. All right. All right, we'll do that. All right, let's talk about something that I don't know. Maybe it's boring to the average person, but to me, I always look at the geopolitical connections to Israel with a lot of these things that Trump does, because so much of what he does is for the benefit of Israel. And you may think, well, what does Israel have to do with Venezuela? Why would Israel want Venezuela to be toppled? Well, that's what I want to talk about. Venezuela didn't just wander into the arms of Iran and Russia, who they're closely linked with. Venezuela was pushed into a relationship with Iran and Russia as a result of decades of Washington, D.C.'s arrogance and the predictable backlash that comes when a superpower like the United States tries to dictate the political future of a sovereign nation to, let's just be honest, to steal its resources, in the case of Venezuela oil. As Hugo Chavez challenged the United States' dominance, Washington responded with economic warfare and with the CIA carrying out covert sabotage. And like clockwork, the vacuum that America created by cracking down on Venezuela, by beating them up, the vacuum that was created was filled by Tehran and by Moscow. Chavez ended up dramatically expanding state control over Venezuela's oil sector. It had been nationalized, I think, in the 70s, and then over time, and foreign investors and politicians in Venezuela ended up giving so much control over to foreign oil companies. But Chavez comes in and he expands state control over Venezuela's oil. And he reversed a lot of these privatization trends that had been going on. He forced foreign companies into minority positions under PDVSA, which is the Venezuelan national oil company. So naturally, this decline in oil profits for these foreign investors did not sit very well with them. You've got powerful foreign bankers, oligarchs, that are now having their profits throttled by Chavez. So when Chavez subsequently died of an unusually aggressive cancer, suspicion across Latin America immediately turned toward the CIA that had been trying to kill him for years. Because Washington had been trying to undermine Chavez over and over and over. President after president. Many regional leaders openly suggested that the United States Central Intelligence Agency played a role in killing Chavez. Chavez, I remember, he kept traveling to Cuba, because Cuba has a much better health system than Venezuela does, trying to get treatment. Now, whether or not it can be proven that the CIA are the ones that engineered Chavez's death, the result was the same. His second in command, Nicolas Maduro, stepped into that power vacuum, and he inherited a nation that was already being targeted for regime change by the United States. The ties between Venezuela and Iran and Russia under Maduro were just the natural result of what we were doing. This was the geopolitical blowback of us going after Venezuela. Venezuela became a functioning outpost for two states that Israel and the United States considered their greatest adversaries. Israel with Iran, the United States with Russia. This is why Trump's obsession with toppling Maduro can't be understood through this shallow propaganda lens of fighting the drug cartels. That's a lie that Americans that believe this stuff, they have to tell themselves that to feel better about the brutality that's being carried out in their name. You don't want to believe that your guy, Donald Trump, is really just part of this deep state, doing all the same things that George W. Bush did. But even published research from the Council on Foreign Relations itself makes it clear fentanyl is not coming into the United States from because of Venezuela. It's coming through Mexico, moved by the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels, with chemical support coming in from China, which is why some sanctions have been put on China. Venezuela is not a major player in fentanyl or cocaine production. There's no credible evidence that Maduro personally commands Tren de Aragua or the so-called Cartel de los Soles. So on this front, Trump's narrative is not just sloppy, it's total BS. It's misleading at best. Of course, none of that means that Venezuela is a normal state with just a couple of corrupt officials here or there. That's not the case at all. I've said that earlier. The government has devolved into a mafia network where military and police officers at every level engage in trafficking and extortion and all kinds of smuggling. Crime is the regime's foundation. It's not like a little thing here or there. But the bottom line is that Trump's caricature of Maduro as some kind of mastermind drug lord poisoning Americans with drugs, that's just absolutely untrue. That is propaganda, just like the Bush administration's propaganda that Saddam Hussein was sitting on a massive trove of dirty bombs and other weapons of mass destruction and was trying to figure out how in the world he could get these into the hands of Al-Qaeda so they could smuggle them into the United States and start setting off dirty bombs around the country to kill millions of Americans. You know, it's just a scare tactic. And that's what all this Trump stuff is about the narco-terrorists from Venezuela controlled by Maduro. The truth is actually a lot simpler. Maduro, one, controls an oil market that these foreign oligarchs, American and Israeli and other oligarchs, want to exploit. And two, Maduro threatens the geopolitical playgrounds of Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv. He's giving Iran breathing room. He's giving Russia reach into our hemisphere. And for both the United States and Israel, that is simply intolerable. Venezuela's critical mistake here is believing that it has a right to control their own resources. Venezuela's critical mistake is believing that they have the right to align themselves with countries that the United States doesn't want them to align themselves with. In other words, Venezuela's mistake is thinking that they are a sovereign country rather than just another vassal of the ever-expanding American empire. Israel has not been very subtle about its hostility toward Venezuela either. On November 24th, just last month, about a week ago, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar stood before Paraguay's Congress, and he said that Venezuela has become the nexus of Hezbollah and Hamas in South America. Now, if you know anything about Israeli propaganda, you know that accusing a country of supporting Hamas is just Zionist speak for these people need to be bombed immediately. This foreign minister from Israel, Sa'ar, painted Venezuela as a staging zone for everything that Israel claims to fear. Islamist networks operating in Venezuela, narco-terrorists, Iranian proxies. So Israel's message is unmistakable. They want something done. Trump's warmongering against Venezuela is not about protecting Americans from drugs. It is about power. It is about money. It is about geopolitical dominance. So if you want to see how foreign influence actually works in Venezuela, take a look at the intelligence services, and this is what I was talking about in that first segment. Chavez and Maduro handed enormous amounts of internal control to foreign actors, not because they wanted to, but because U.S. pressure forced them to. Cuba was the one that stepped in first. For nearly 20 years, Cuban intelligence officials have shaped, operated, and in many cases, outright controlled large portions of Venezuela's internal security system. The Cubans went in and reorganized the military. They purged the anti-Chavista officers in the military. They built surveillance networks that have kept the regime alive. Like I said, the Venezuelan leaders have got a lot to fear from their own people. There are a lot of competing factions. So Maduro has also gone to Cuba a lot. And these trips to Cuba are not just symbolic. These are reminders of who keeps his government from collapsing. Now, that was Cuba. They were the first ones to jump in there. But then came Iran and Russia as the United States and Israel pushed them further and further out of the global community, off into the corners by themselves. Washington is trying to suffocate Venezuela economically. So Tehran and Moscow, who are also dealing with similar problems with the United States, they offer lifelines to Venezuela. Iran goes in and they build intelligence sharing pipelines. They set up sanctions evasion channels. Russia comes in, they provide the military hardware, the cyber support, strategic cover. And so by the mid-2020s, just in the from 2020 to now, 2025, this has evolved into a fully integrated security ecosystem. Israel saw exactly what was happening. And if you've got a Venezuela that is aligned with Iran, that's creating a safe haven for enemies that Israel routinely targets around the world, that's a problem. It creates an offshore workspace for Israel's enemies that is financed through oil, protected by geography, strengthened by the very sanctions that Washington thought were going to break Caracas. Iran didn't go in there and say, hey, let's just invest in Venezuela just to be nice. They did this out of their own geopolitical necessity because of the pressure put on them by Israel and by the United States. So through state-run businesses and shell corporations, covert financial networks, Iran starts moving oil and technology and capital and logistics through these channels in Venezuela. Not as favors to Maduro, because it was helping them with what they wanted as well. They were supplying Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Iran's constellation of proxy forces, benefiting from this agreement, this collaboration. And what Iran is doing in Venezuela, their cooperation there, Israeli jets can't go in there and carry out these strikes the way that they do everywhere over in the Middle East. With complete abandon, without any concern, Israel goes into Lebanon, into Syria, into Iraq, into Yemen, carrying out strikes wherever, whenever, to try and degrade Iran's forces, its proxies, its networks. Can't do that in Venezuela. They can't simply send fighter jets on a whim to go carry out strikes in Venezuela. And that's a big problem for Israel, considering Venezuela is allied now with Iran. And you've got the diplomatic cover that Venezuela provides for Iran, especially at the United Nations. Venezuela is an outspoken proponent and defender of Iran. So for Israel, this alone is enough to get the Israeli government to label Venezuela as supporting terrorism. Because Israel's foreign policy is, their doctrine is simple. Any state that gives Iran any kind of support, they become a target of Israel, whether that is diplomatic, economic, military support to Iran. So Maduro has made himself an enemy of Israel. If Israel could break that Venezuelan alliance between Venezuela and Iran, that would be a gift to Israel. And if the alliance with Russia were to be broken, that would be a gift to the United States. It's a gift that Trump is determined to add to the mountain of presents that he has already showered down upon Israel and its oligarchs to whom he has bent the knee. Trump has clearly, unmistakably served the interests of Israel throughout his 2 terms as president. And not just the government, not just the state of Israel, but the whims and wishes and investment dreams of the major backers of Israel. Remember, there are billionaires who are the primary financiers of AIPAC and all of the other apparatuses that Israel uses to co-opt the U.S. government. And these are the billionaires that invested in Trump, got him elected, and he knows he owes them. And he knows that he has the opportunity to make money himself through these connections. Then we've got Russia. Russia's involvement in Venezuela, it's not, again, same thing. It's not charity, it's a chess move. Venezuela gives Russia the opportunity for them to come over and plant a flag in the Western Hemisphere, just like we, through NATO, have done all around Russia. And Russia can come over here and basically dare the United States to react. We don't want them here. Monroe Doctrine. We don't want Europeans or Asians or Africans or anyone from outside of our hemisphere to come in and do anything. But we will do it to them because we're the United States. So when you add Russia to the mix, you've got Iran in there working with Venezuela. Now you add Russia's presence, and you've got a shield around the Iranian activity going on in Venezuela. Because the United States, it's one thing to go after Iran. It's another thing if you're going to kill Russians, though. You know, Russia has nuclear weapons. They can fight back. If the United States or a U.S. aligned state like Israel were to pressure Maduro too aggressively, Russia could potentially respond. Like I said, based on what we've seen of Putin, the way that he's abandoned all of his allies over there, when push came to shove, I don't anticipate that he would, take any kind of a military stand. It's not in the interest of Russia to do that on behalf of Venezuela. But still, this complicates the presence of Russia and their relationship with Maduro complicates Israel's interests because Israel relies on the United States dominance to pressure Iran. So when Russia becomes a variable in this equation and the United States now has to work around Russia because they are more of a peer, Israel's freedom of action shrinks. They can't go in and carry, maybe they can't send their fighter jets over, but they could send the Mossad in. They've done that, many times around the world, going into foreign countries. But they can't do that in Venezuela, not in any significant way, when you've got Russia there as well. So if you can remove Maduro, that would weaken the Russian position because you take away Russia's main ally, their main person there. It would also strip Iran of a rare power partner that's willing to support its operations in the Americas, which is what Russia has been doing. And nothing angers Washington and Tel Aviv more than a country that helps Iran survive these sanctions that America and our coalition partners use to try and strangle Iran and bring it to its knees, to try and eliminate the last man standing in the region that can stand up to Israel. And that's exactly what Venezuela became. They became a way for Iran to continue to grow, to evade sanctions, because Maduro in Venezuela and Tehran, they constructed a sanctions evasion architecture. They've got things like oil for gold trades. They do falsified tanker transponders so you can't track black oil, black market oil. They engage in cryptocurrency laundering. There are shell corporations, diplomatic passport networks. So they are working with each other. These are channels through which Iran is able to fund its proxies, bypass U.S. banks and the U.S. banking system. It keeps its overseas operations alive, and it keeps them propped up. And Israel does not want Iran to be propped up. They want the total collapse of Iran. Sanctions are one of the few tools that reliably weaken Iran's ability to project force in the region. So when you've got Venezuela helping Iran to dodge those sanctions, Israel considers that direct harm to its own security. And as you know, Trump's foreign policy cannot be separated from Israel's strategic goals. Look at it. His administration has mirrored Israeli preferences again and again and again and again. It was Donald Trump's moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, proclaiming that the United States recognizes all of Jerusalem, East and West Jerusalem, as a unified capital for Israel. That's the thing that kicked off all of the craziness over there that led up to the October 7th attacks, which exploded into the conflict that we saw that followed. Trump did that for the benefit of Israel, and more specifically for the benefit of the billionaire oligarchs that helped buy the campaign for him, like Sheldon Adelson. Trump moved to shield Israel diplomatically even before he had taken office. That's why General Michael Flynn ended up just 2 weeks into the administration having to quit, because he was brokering on behalf of Israel. He was brokering deals with, or trying to broker deals for Israel diplomatically in the United Nations. Then you've got Donald Trump going along with Netanyahu's plan to kill Qasem Soleimani, which almost got the United States embroiled in a major war. Trump always governs with Israeli security doctrine in mind. Not that he understands the nuances of all of this, but he knows. He knows who's got his back. And he knows who's got the compromat on him and could destroy him. So when Trump targets Maduro, this pattern is easy to see. What's in it for Israel? It would choke Iran's Western Hemisphere operations. It would reduce Russian influence, which helps to protect Iran. It would break sanctions evasion channels that have been established between Iran and Venezuela. It would weaken support networks for some of these Iranian anti-Israel groups. So this is not subtle. It is not accidental. It is pro-Zionist foreign policy shaped by the belief that anything that harms Iran is somehow good for the United States and, more importantly, good for Israel. Israel doesn't need to go out and put a bunch of press releases out about Venezuela. I saw in the chat earlier, some of you were like, oh, I haven't heard this angle before. Israel does a good job keeping a lot of their cards close to their chest. They're very sneaky. Remember the Mossad motto, by deception thou shalt do war. They are sneaky. If they can do things from the shadows, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to go out and brief the press. They're not going to go out and announce, we want Donald Trump to go attack. In fact, even that strike on Qasem Soleimani, it was from start to finish an Israeli plan. And yet, right before the strike against Soleimani was carried out, Netanyahu said, no, we're pulling back from this. Israel is not going to be an actual actor in this. But Trump, you go ahead and carry it out since it's already in process. Because Israel didn't want to face the scrutiny for their role in it. Likewise, Israel is not going to come out publicly talking about how badly they want Trump to knock off the not just Maduro, but the system that helps to support Iran. Removing Maduro would cut off Iranian funding routes. It would eliminate a safe haven for some of these operatives that I've talked about. One thing that I think most people know, when you're investigating crimes, you should ask the question, who stands to gain from this? If you don't know who committed the crime, who is it that stands to gain from this? Because this line of inquiry often points the investigator in the right direction. And in the case of toppling the government of Venezuela, the arrow points not only at the oil investors gaining, but also at the state of Israel gaining. And it just so happens that the oil investors and the people who are pushing the geopolitical policies of Israel happen to be the same people. Venezuela's partnerships with Iran and Russia, they're not ideological ornaments. These are operational structures that are built in response to American coercion, exploited by states that Washington and Israel have spent decades trying to contain. So Venezuela becomes a pivot point. This is a place where American sanctions are failing against Iran, a place where intelligence networks connected to Iran are expanding. It is allowing states that are geopolitical foes of America, like Russia, to gain a foothold beyond America's immediate reach. So removing Maduro would collapse that system. It would shrink Iran's global reach. It would clip Russia's expansion. It would give Israel one less arena where its adversaries can move freely. Just look what they've done over the last several years. They go into country after country after country and carry out airstrikes to try and degrade Iran's forces, their networks. So Trump's enthusiasm for regime change, it's not about saving Americans from drugs. If you believe that, I'm sorry, but I got a bridge to sell you. And as proof, consider this. Last year, former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, was found guilty of conspiring to import hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States. And so he was arrested, he was tried, and he was convicted. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison for trafficking cocaine into the United States. But just this week, Donald Trump announced a full and complete pardon for Hernandez and had him released from prison. So no, Trump's stuff in Venezuela isn't because he doesn't like drug dealers. His actions are part of a broader strategy to realign the hemisphere around U.S. and Israeli interests. We're living in an age when very powerful Zionists have gained a stunning degree of influence over the American people and our government. Wars for Israel have become the new normal, right? You know they have. Sooner or later, this parasitical relationship between the United States and Israel is going to be the downfall of our nation. So it is in our interest to speak out now, despite Donald Trump's efforts to ban criticism of Israel everywhere he can, especially on college campuses. It is in our best interest to speak out now while we still can, because the troops that Trump has deployed into the streets of America, they're going after the dark-skinned people now. They might just be coming for the rest of us next, because we don't toe the line on Israel. And if you don't think that kind of society is something we could see, I'm telling you, I am looking in the crystal ball, and that is ahead of us if we don't rein in Israel's influence over our politicians. And I am so heartened to see the changes that have taken place over the last several years. I remember when I first started ranting against Israel on YouTube back in 2012, I was alone. Everybody called me an anti-Semite. Oh, you hate Jews. No, I don't. I'm against the policies of the state of Israel. No. It was lonely, and man, did I get hammered. For years, I was a glutton for punishment. I kept coming back. I'd get strikes on my videos. Eventually, I'd get them either overturned, or I'd start a new channel and I'd be back saying the same stuff. And it continued throughout Trump's first term. It was still the same thing. There were very, very few people speaking out against Israel because their ability to crush dissidents was so extensive, so powerful, so far-reaching. Fortunately, I was independent. I didn't have to. They couldn't come after my employer and get me fired because I worked for myself. But it's been a nasty process. So I look out now and I see everywhere I look on YouTube and in social media, people and the influencers collectively speaking out against Israel. And I am overjoyed. I am glad to see these changes. I'm glad that people are waking up, and I'm glad that people are willing to take a stand for what is right without being worried about being called an anti-Semite. That charge has lost so much power in the last 2 years even. There's been a big decline in the power of that label to silence people who speak out against the crimes of Israel. So I like where things are going. As long as people can keep from sliding into legitimate, actual bigotry toward Jewish people because they are Jewish, and stick to the principles of, I don't care what your race, your nationality, your ethnicity, your religion, I don't care about any of that. That's not what matters. What matters is what your country is doing. And if your country is going around stealing people's lands, killing people in large numbers, co-opting the politicians of other nations so that you can control those foreign governments and basically turn the people of those countries into chattel, into bovine out there to provide money to you to the tune of billions and billions of dollars a year. You deserve to be criticized. You deserve to be shamed. You deserve every epithet that people spew at you not because of your religion, not because of your race or ethnicity or anything like that, because you are committing acts of evil. And it should be called out. And that's where we're at now. That's where things are getting to. And Donald Trump is on the wrong side of history with all this. The way that he's covering up the Epstein files for not only to protect himself, but to protect these same people involved in their Zionist activism for Israel. It's absolutely shameful. The way that he is putting Israel first when he's talking about we need Doge to cut back on all this spending and all the, let's cut people's health care and everything else. Let's, while at the same time continuing to increase funding to Israel. It's crazy. We need to shore away Zionism from the United States. If all Zionism means is the Jewish people seeking to have a good way of life for themselves, to live in peace and safety, in harmony with their neighbors, celebrating their own religion, their own culture, their own history, their own values, I support that. If it means stealing the lands from people who have lived there for generations and generations, for centuries upon centuries, and murdering them and their children so that you can have their territory to expand your colonialist program of importing Jews from Europe and planting them in the Middle East, I don't support that. If Zionism means coming into the United States and cracking down on college students, taking advantage because maybe they didn't choose the best words in their criticism of Israel, and now you're going to destroy them, put them on canary mission, blacklist them, annihilate them, and then have your puppet in the White House, Donald Trump, go and start deporting them because they're here on visas and they criticize Israel, and that is worthy of getting you kicked out, or taking American citizens who work at these universities and having them fired, forcing the colleges to fire their professors because they have said things against Israel. That's freaking Nazi Germany. That's worse than Nazi Germany. This is America. We get to say what we want, have the opinions that we want, even if the next door neighbor doesn't like it, and especially if some foreign country across the ocean doesn't like it. Who cares what they think? I have the God-given, inalienable, natural human right to speak my mind and say what I want, as long as I'm not advocating violence or harm or abuse against somebody. As long as my speech is not violating the human rights of another person, I get to say whatever the hell I want, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. How dare Donald Trump come along and tell us, you cannot talk about this, you cannot say that, you cannot criticize Israel. Who does he think he is? Anyway, don't get me started on that. Well, that's all that I'm going to say about Venezuela for tonight, because I'm looking at the time here saying I need to start to cut it short so I can do the other drawings here. Let me go back and acknowledge the folks that made some donations while I was going on this last rant. Stephen Niflis. I worked graveyard shift, 12 hours, and every time you stream, I am already at work. I'm just on break. Keep on streaming. I can check out whatever videos you leave up. Thank you, Stephen, for your donation. I appreciate you. And let me go ahead and do 2 slips here for Stephen's donations. Thank you, Stephen. I don't know if you're still out there. You may be back working again, but thank you. We will pop your name in there. Thank you, good sir. Hey, good to see Defend Your Base out there. What's up, my brother? He says, meanwhile, multiple states, including mine, are passing digital ID laws. All right, skipping down. R Factor. Thank you, R Factor, for your donation. Let's see here. And if anybody wants to be added into this next drawing, now is the time to get your donation in. Let me put the donation options back up on the screen. Of course, you can do the super chat. But in case you don't want to do super chats, here are the other ways. Patreon, Blackstone on Substack, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube channel memberships. You can also do Venmo or CashApp. I think I had... Let me just pop that back in the chat real quick. Sorry, let me do this. Sorry to spam you guys a little bit. I'll just put these links back in. I put them in at the very beginning of the show, but... put it in here. And then last two. All right. R Factor. Let me see here if I have got... Look at that. I got two for R Factor already waiting. Thank you, R Factor. Put these into the drawing. Thank you, sir. Then we have Phil. Phil, let me fill out a couple slips here and get you into this drawing. Here we go, Phil. Thank you, sir. Put those in there. Phil writes, libertarians called anti-Semites for being critical of Israel years ago. Now we're called leftists. Glad that some of MAGA is waking up. Thanks for doing what you do, Jake. Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, 2028. Hey, that'd be a good ticket. That's a ticket I'd be willing to vote for. I'm not completely in line with everything there from Massey and Paul, but a good deal of it. Absolutely. I like that ticket. Mountain Hours. Thank you for your donations. Let me do a couple of slips here. Sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses, so I'm not spelling everything out, but there's the abbreviation, Mountain Hours. Thank you very much for your donations. All right. All right, and then I think that is all of them. Have I missed anybody? I don't always get alerts if you've made a donation some other way, but if anyone else has donated and I'm not seeing it, now's the time to let me know in the chat. I'm going to put on music for just a second, and then we will do the drawing. Let's see here. Yeah, 80s disco Back to the Future theme. Yeah, I've got to use generic public domain music so I don't get copyright strikes. All right. Let's go ahead and turn that off. Let's do the drawing. Who's going to win? We already had, in the first half, we had a lot from John Bolton. If I pull John Bolton's name, since he's got 7 entries, I'm just going to do a second. I'm going to pull another one there. Give someone else a chance. Because we already got, John's already a wiener. All right. Make sure nothing falls out. All right. Here we go. I'm just going to grab the first one that I can get my fat hand on. And the winner is New Jersey's Devil said, "Did you get my donation?" Where was your donation? Let's see. Your activity. Let's see. Phil, R Factor, Steven, John Bolton. I don't see it. Was it a super chat or... tell me what it was. I'll double check. And then CashApp. Gotcha. Give me a second here. I don't know why it didn't give me an alert. Give me a second here. Oops. Yeah, and it didn't send me alert. You know what? I'm going to do another. I got you there. Yes, I'm going to do. I'll do another drawing here in a second, just to give you another chance. But since I've already drawn this name, Mountain Hours. So here's how it works. I'll explain it in just a second. I'm going to do another drawing here in just a second. Because I want to put New Jersey Devil in. NJ Devil. NJ Devil. Okay. A new car. That's right, Mountain Hours. I'll tell you in a second how to redeem your prize in a minute. But I'm going to add, because I didn't see it earlier, New Jersey Devil. I'm going to put 2 slips in for New Jersey Devil. Put those in. Shake it up. All right. Okay. Let's look here. All right. I think I've got one. All right. John Bolton. He already won once. Let me do it. Let me reach in and get another one here. Yeah. Let me reach in. I've got my finger on one, but I got one that was hanging there. Well, would you look at that? With all of those in there, and New Jersey Devil sliding in at the last minute is a wiener. Congratulations. So we have 3 winners tonight. We've got John Bolton. We have got Mountain Hours. And we have got New Jersey Devil. Now, here is how you guys, let me tell you the prizes and how to redeem. You have the option at the, for this, an autographed pocket Constitution, or I don't have one to show you, but an autographed 5x7 photo of me, or a 1-month subscription to the paid Blackstone Intel report on Substack, where I publish tons of material there. And I was just going to show you. Yeah, there's the Substack. So I've got different reports that I publish. This was one from today. This was actually a free one that I put out, but it's got, you can go to the latest podcast from there.
While holiday shopping is almost...
Yeah, ads, of course. But anyway, that's an option. So what you do for one of those 3 prizes, the photo, the Substack, or the Pocket Constitution, is you email me. When you email me, make sure that I know your username, because it's probably going to be different from your real name. But email me at jake@blackstoneintel.com. Put it in the chat there. jake@blackstoneintel.com. Tell me, hey, I won a prize in the live stream last night. My username is this, and the prize that I want is this. Now, if you want either the photo or the Pocket Constitution, you'll need to give me a physical address to mail it to. If you want the Substack subscription, all I need is your email address, and I can sign you up that way, and you get a month of the Substack. Okay. Thank you guys for your support. I really appreciate you all. It's nice to get to hang out and talk with people who think a little bit more independently than what we typically see with the masses that get broken off into different ideological camps of I carry the flag for the Republican Party, or I carry the flag for the Democrats. I'm a progressive, and if you don't like it, screw you. Or I'm a conservative. If you don't like it, screw you. When you become factional and tribal, it shuts down the part of your brain that lets you think independently and analyze data and see things in a neutral way. And you can be more easily controlled when you become tribal, because it becomes less about what is true or what is right and more about what is necessary to defend my group. So anyway, you're my kind of people. Beyond the Veil says, can you do a report about the Rothschilds' hand in the founding of this counterfeit Israeli state? I don't know if I still have that up or not. I have done some videos on that. I'll have to look and see if I've still got it up on my channel or not. I have done over 2,000 videos over the years, and my channel has relatively few because, well, mostly because YouTube made me take down a ton of stuff. And because it was smart for me to take stuff down because I kept getting hit with strikes. So to keep the channel from getting shut down again, which is the biggest pain in the butt, because then you have to start over from scratch again with no followers and build it back up again. So anyway, having too big of an archive kept a target on my back because my detractors out there just keep, they would just keep flagging videos one after another. Didn't matter if there was anything in them that was offensive or anything, because there wasn't. You just keep flagging in the hopes that the sheer numbers, eventually one's going to stick. It's just harassment. That's the nice thing about Twitch, is that you can do a video on demand, even with often copyrighted material. And as long as, or you can do the live stream, and as long as you don't save it as a video on demand where someone can come in and watch it afterward, usually you don't get hit with strikes. Yeah, Hasbro trolls is right. Hey, thank you, Just Nobody 6920, who says, I want to thank you for showing me the truth. Many years ago, you spoke about Trump's connection with the Rothschild via Wilbur Ross, and it opened my eyes to many things. So again, thank you. Hey, that's a kind comment. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you to say. And of course, I appreciate the donation. Thank you. You guys rock. Thank you. Phil says, I forgot what Jake's channel was before Blackstone. The original name of the first channel I had was End Times News Report. And it was back then. The thing I was really into was geopolitics, primarily of the Middle East, but looking at it through kind of an eschatological viewpoint. What was happening, say, with Turkey that maybe would have some parallel in scripture or something like that. And just looking at how the chaos of the Middle East was getting worse and worse and worse. So that was originally it. But over time, I built a bigger network, very big network with hundreds of people in it, and started finding that I'm getting so much intelligence, so much information from people that are in, they're willing to share data with me, that I found that I actually could operate a small intelligence, private intelligence company. And that's what I did. I converted it over into just doing journalism, into investigating crimes, investigating sex trafficking networks, investigating crimes like the Vegas massacre, and things like that, where I was getting a lot of information from. I got information from people inside the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. I was getting credit card receipts, not receipts, but statements from people that worked for a credit card company. They were putting themselves at risk because it was definitely would have gotten them fired for sending me copies of Stephen Paddock's credit card bills, which allowed me to go and see what he was spending, where he was spending. I could look up the locations of these businesses, track routes, and that's how I started putting together his activities and realized that he was involved in certain operations, which helped me to figure out which agencies, plural, were using him as an asset. Anyway, which led to me getting in trouble with the FBI. And also why that was the one of the things where YouTube required me to remove most of my Vegas stuff. Is either that or they were going to give me strikes and remove it that way. But they had gotten an order to have me remove stuff because I was putting out things that were deemed inappropriate for public consumption. I'll say it that way. Anyway, so thank you guys for all your support tonight. I appreciate you. thank you so much. I will be back, if not tomorrow, then the next day with another stream. We'll do something else. And yes, I will try to do it earlier in the evening to get it started earlier. I think starting around 8 o'clock would be 8 p.m. Eastern time would probably be a good time, a better time for a lot of people than me starting it at 10 o'clock Eastern. We'll see. Anyway, thank you so much. Hope you have a great evening. I appreciate you, and we will talk next time.